that was kind of what he ran into. So that's what this one is based off of. This is well done because you'll see people from all over. It does 4 micro cases, like 9 minutes each, and then kind of connecting as a social worker and how we relate to it, because it is well done. My reflection's terrible today. I might have to go this way. That may do it.
The have and the have-nots. The line. The place that people on the bottom are trying to get to, and the place that people on the top are trying to keep from going below. They don't want to look below it either. They don't want to see what's down there because that'll make them feel too guilty about being above it.
The line is the fire line in which people face survival or death. And sometimes the person holding the gun is their neighbor, and sometimes it's their congressman or their alderman who's not doing enough to help them.
The line is where you are always in a position to give help. And then for the first time, this line of I've gone from being somebody who could help to being somebody who needs help.
There's a certain amount of pride that comes in being independent. And there's a certain amount of shame that comes into having to beg for every little thing that you get.
$23,000 is no money yearly. And yet I can still see families who make $35,000, who are still poor, who are still about to lose their home, who still can't afford groceries.
When you start trying to tell people about poverty, they start making excuses and making heartless statements about why people are in poverty, and they don't even have a clue.
Some of the most prevalent and damaging stereotypes about poor people are that they're lazy, that they're stupid, they don't have any skills, prefer poverty, that they can't take care of their families.
Poor people are working harder, just trying to keep their heads above water than we can even imagine. It's hard.
It doesn't matter if you have to stand in line and kind of feel bad about yourself, that you're a failure. You have to cross that line to be able to keep the lights on, to be able to keep feeding your kids.
That could be you without a house, wondering if they're going to go and put you out. But for the grace of God, because a lot of these people had jobs, have degrees, did everything right, but the bottom fell out. And that bottom was that line. They went below that line.
Has anybody ever heard of the poverty line? Is that like a normal phrase of speech? It's usually, well, when they describe it here, what it costs for a family of 4 to survive in America. This was made during the great financial crisis. So it's very possible the money is way higher now, like family of 4, housing cost, food, things of that nature. So it's just 4 case studies all throughout the country. We got Chicago, New Orleans, East Coast, and somewhere else, and they all give their breakdown. So as a social worker, you may have these folks come to you either for housing, a food pantry, soup kitchen, job help. And often you'll start as a case manager. Some of you could even do case management now. And does anybody work for the group homes yet? What is considered good pay nowadays? If you got a job, if it was good pay locally, not like Chicago, teens per hour or more like, I know 10 an hour is like minimal or something in places.
I think that's minimal wage here too.
What's that?
14 an hour here at the daycare, but in Chicago at the daycare, I get paid 15.
So it's 10,000 extra per year if that was a full-time job. Okay. So 14 here, how far is the daycare?
Like 25 minutes.
In Dayton. Okay. Anybody else? What is good pay? What would you like to have as pay? And what do you get?
I currently work, I just got a new job at a rehab facility.
Okay.
I make 15, but I don't think that's enough.
Great. That was
I make 14 good.
right. And we already talked about the money supply and money printing, right? Since the pandemic. Does that make sense to anybody, or do we need to go over it again? Stimmy checks, you remember hearing about stimmy checks? Do they still give those anywhere? So it was exciting. I got one. They don't pay us very much here. We're like 49 assistant professor, 59 associate professor, 69 full professor. So you got to get on grants, you got to teach summer school. It's a ton for a single person, but when you've got a family of 6, it does maybe fall on the line. Shoot, it already timed out. See, I talked too much. All right. Is it already not working? Pause. All right, any questions? We got 4 case studies, 9 minutes each. Is it noise and no video?
DuPage County is considered one of the richest counties in the state of Illinois.
Anybody from Chicago?
Top 50 counties in the country as far as per capita income.
DuPage
So
County?
there are a lot of well-educated, middle-class, upper middle-class people that live here. There's also
See, I shouldn't have
part of
talked
the
so
county that
much.
people don't talk about. There's the about 10% of the population that lives at or below the federal
Poverty line.
COVID? I hope not.
Good morning. There you go. Thank you. Just have a seat over there. Okay, thanks.
I remember the first time that I tried to go, I just couldn't do it. I drove there and I sat there and I couldn't get out of the car. And the second time I got out of the car, I went in line and then just got either impatient or just sort of embarrassed and just kind of walked away. Because you just don't want to admit that you're that defeated. You've been brought up never to be a charity case, never to have to ask for help. And all of a sudden you're in that position where you got nowhere else to go. And it's hard.
You're here for food pantry today.
Right.
And you have a birthday bag for Jason.
Yes,
Good. How old is Jason?
it's gonna be 12.
Is DuPage County a rich county? A little bit of both. Those are nice houses.
Suburban poverty is now at currently higher rate than urban poverty.
That's a lot.
It's been a tidal wave over the last 5 years, whereas maybe before it was a trickle, now it's just suddenly, people standing outside the door of the food pantry waiting for us to open. There's a desperation and all the organizations haven't been ready to deal with the numbers of people coming through their doors. Private organizations are a drop in the bucket compared to the federal assistance programs. And so I think there's got to be a partnership. We certainly know that we have a responsibility to do the job that we're doing, and we want to do the job we're doing, but we can't do it alone. We need the resources of the government to help.
So you said 2 from here?
Right.
And then 1 from here? Okay. Okay,
Applesauce.
all right. 1 box of cereal? Okay, all right. Should I go healthy?
or what the kids like.
Everyone comes here. It's people that have grown up in poverty to people that had six-figure jobs that were running companies that have lost their jobs. So they're at the end of the rope and they end up here because they don't have anywhere else to turn.
I'm 48 years old and I have 3 kids, single dad, got a daughter who's 17, and 2 sons. They're 14 and 11. It'll be 12 on Tuesday or Wednesday, so.
Okay. All right.
I was in banking as senior vice president, making the 6 figures. I was very comfortable.
Dang, it's a lot.
And the last bank I was at was acquired, went off on my own, and started to organize banks kind of at the perfect wrong time in a perfect storm, and kind of everything fell apart from that.
Okay.
Also a big turkey in the back.
My wife at that time filed for divorce because we were in an affluent town. Kind of the stress of all of it took its toll on our marriage, and pretty much that was it. I had to decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had always in the back of my mind thought about teaching. My mom was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, my sister's a teacher, so I kind of thought, well, maybe this is my signal to make that transition.
And you had majors in your education? Changed over? So 2 of you? You can be a social worker in the school if you want to be. So I remember the same as him, where you could send out your resume back then. Can you still do this? And you could send 100 resumes out to companies at a time. Click. And you might get 1 reply. Like when it's a bad economy. Sucks.
Sometimes you just feel like you're sending your resume into a black hole. You know, you talk, to a principal or you follow up and they're like, we've got 4,000 applicants. And you're like, okay, how do I get noticed? How do I do anything? Pretty much I've been on my own for 2 years, trying to make by on substitute teaching income, trying to make by on any tutoring income I can get on the side. And substitute teaching, you're looking at $85 to $100 a day, depending if you get called into work that day. And usually it's last minute. You may get a phone call at 5:30 in the morning. For me, best case, if I'm working almost every day, I can make $12,000. That would be the best I could do.
That's around the time they doubled the unemployment benefits, but it still didn't last. We did have the Affordable Care Act passage.
I never thought I would be in that position. I was a straight A student. I got a high ACT, went to a great school, graduated high honors. Everything is roses. Everything's perfect in your life. Coffee, always desperate for coffee. You have to work really hard to find the way to get by. The government isn't really seeking you out to say, we want to help you get you back on your feet.
All the bread you want? Oh, the bread? Okay. All right.
I mean, I'm insulted if somebody says, John, you're just lazy. You're just not trying. You just don't care. I'm like, I care. I care more than anybody. Thank you very much. It's sort of like being at a grocery store where not everything's been put on the shelf, but you just have to do the best you can and hope you get enough that can help you to get through each month. So you kind of put your own choices to the back burner because you just have to try to look and say, what do you really need?
I think that there's a real divide in this country and that people are struggling. The people that maybe are sort of untouched by the recession think that, unemployment is going down and things are starting to look up, businesses are starting to hire people.
Has anyone heard how the unemployment statistics can get moved around differently? It's a weird stat, but if you're looking for a job for 6 months and you still don't get one, they take you off the unemployment rolls. So you actually could have somebody that's still unemployed, but because it's U6, I think they call it U6, under 6 months looking for unemployment. One statistic I like to use, and if you quoted it in anything you wrote for this class, I'd love it, but it's shadow stats. So it gives the shadow government statistics about the real unemployment, the real inflation rate, the real number. Does anybody know what the inflation rate has been the past 2 years? What's the most frequent thing you guys buy? Food, water, gas?
Yes.
Have you noticed what happened to bags of chips?
Eggs are really expensive.
I just bought 400 eggs because they went on sale at Kroger's in the past 3 weeks. I got 10 dozen 3 weeks ago, and then I got 10 18 packs this weekend. My wife's kind of pissed. But they were like $2.50 a dozen, and they're all going up to $4.50 a dozen. So I just doubled down. It's like, that's the cheapest food you can get. So we'll get into the shadow government statistics, but they say inflation is only 2 or 3%. Shadowstats.com says it's more like 10, 12.
They're not seeing those people that have really, really been struggling for a long, long time.
You have to make choices sometimes about what bills you're gonna pay. I mean, I've had my gas shut off, I've had my electric shut off, it's horrifying, and it's embarrassing when your kids go to turn on something and it doesn't work. It's the most horrible feeling in the world. Kids just don't get it. I think that's been the hardest thing, is just to answer the questions. My youngest son would just say, Dad, when are you gonna get your car fixed? And it's like, well, when I can, I have gotten used to checking for the expiration dates sometimes. Just gotta be careful. Not that you're angry, you're grateful that you get what you get, but one time I got like some Velveeta that somebody donated. It was like 5 years old. It was like a black brick. But I'm hoping that I can hold on for at least another year, maybe two. My kids at the age they are, I really want to be around for them, so moving isn't an option for me. I just feel like I've aged so much.
So it's weird because that looks like a nice house, doesn't it? Like you're going to the food bank or things like that. And that's where in America, poverty is confusing. He did have a 6-figure job. He was laid off. This isn't his house. I don't know if they've said this yet, but he fixes up these houses to live there for free. Like for people who got dumped, foreclosed on, like the bank took their house back, or he lives there and does work on the houses. So it is deceiving. It's like, well, that's a nice house. Why are you at the food pantry?
It's like a constant kind of throbbing in your mind of like, what am I going to do? I don't want to worry about this anymore, but you just don't know how to stop it. You're doing everything that every person says is the right thing to do, the right steps to follow, but it's not happening. And what if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't happen fast enough?
I do think that a lot of the violence and a lot of what is going on right now is associated with people who are living with post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma is simply a shift, a sudden shift in the ways in which we understand life and make meaning. Trauma in a psychological or more psychosocial sort of sense in which
Is it going up at all?
I'm poor now. Wow. What am I supposed to do? Or the other experience of people who have lived in poverty their entire life, and their mother did, and their grandmother did, and their grandmother did. So there've been generations of poverty, and there is a more deeper trauma, which is affiliated with this sort of nihilism or this sense of meaninglessness and hopelessness that says we will always be this way.
So this guy is more, I think, south side of Chicago. Is that the right way to describe it? The K-Town. Has anybody ever heard of K-Town? It's where all the streets named K are, and there's, similar to Cincinnati, there's a lot of gun violence, but it's weird because aren't guns banned in Chicago? So what's up with that before I hit play? Anybody, like, are they really banned in Chicago?
I don't know, but it's a lot of, they're not necessarily banned. I mean,
The city did. Okay.
I feel like they were already there, like.
Right. Okay. Right. That's why it's weird. Is it's like, but guns are banned. Why was there that shooting every weekend? So okay.
This will always be the case.
So his 9-minute clip is about the violence of poverty and the trauma piece he mentioned. He describes.
We're on Monroe and Pulaski, and it's considered K-Town from Pulaski to Laramie because of the Carlisle Keeler, all the case. And this is where I grew up, in this house, with my family, my father, my mother, my 2 sisters, and 3 brothers. My sister was going to play for church, which was about a block that way, about 2 blocks over. And she was walking, it was late, around 10 or so. She was coming down around the corner. She was shot and killed. She was shot in the head and killed. Police never came. I mean, they came for that night, but there was never an investigation. So as far as I'm concerned, they never found out who actually killed her. But that destroyed our family, pretty much. That was the beginning of the end of the family that we knew. Just one bullet. We never recovered. One bullet. You know, and we never recovered. I think the thing that bothers me the most is that my sister wasn't a statistic. She had a name. She had a family. She had people that loved her, who depended on her for their survival, literally for their survival emotionally. And it's hard for me even to come down this block. It's a long time that I can even drive down this block because I always think about the day that I heard the bullet.
It's crazy in these streets, and it's hard right now to start judging. But when you get enough pain, it's enough tears, wondering if God still loves us.
So I go by Jay Quest, and my music is what my ministry is. It's around helping people understand that you're human and that you have a ton of possibility and a ton of potential inside of you. And we need to hear that more in these communities of poverty. People are killing each other for some very plain reasons, because whether they're poor or not, in terms of a quantitative measurement, they feel poor. They feel like they need more. They feel less than human. They feel offended by their government. They feel offended by their neighbor.
It's crazy, it's a world we created. It's like my dreams are rich. It's pain that I was making. It's crazy,
Most of the young people where I grew up, like in K-Town, they didn't expect to live past 18, 20, because their friends are dying like, around them. Like this is literally a war. They never know from one day to the next if you're gonna wake up and your friend is gonna be gone, or if it's gonna be you. So there is no hope. You know why they're not so keen on education? Because education means you plan to have a future. They don't plan to have a future. They think that the streets are going to kill them. That's their reality. One of my first jobs was working at a bank downtown. And when I would say to people where I came from, where I lived, they would be so shocked. Really? You lived over there? Because they don't expect people from K-Town or certain areas to be able to get out and get good jobs and to actually look like success. I was one of the youngest supervisors at the bank. I didn't have my first child till I was 30. I didn't have to depend on anyone, and all the bottom fell out in one fall. It's just all the bottom fell out. There was a screw. My boot got caught in the screw, and I fell head first, 14 feet into a wall. I broke my arm in two places. I knocked my brain into my spinal column. So it's caused me to start having strokes. I ended up having to have brain surgery where they had to take a big piece of my skull out so my brain could breathe. It took me 15, 20 years to finally get back to where I could be up and around. And keep in mind that I had a 7-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I knew I needed to leave, to move out of that neighborhood when my son turned 7.
See, I had a lot of fun as a child running up and down the block. I didn't realize that I was around one of the biggest drug operations right behind my house. There was a lot of stuff being sold in and out through there. They'd ask me to take something to someone else. You know, I've done that in the building, and I didn't even realize what I was doing. I was just delivering, you know, thinking, hey, they asked me to take this down.
Some of these little boys I knew were bad news. He didn't, but I knew. This house that we live in now used to belong to my parents. And then when my father passed, the house was just too much for my mother to handle. And so my sister, my brother, myself, we all moved out here to live with my mom. And together we made it a community home, which is what, you know, quite often happens when people are trying to, you know, get out of a bad situation. Right after, about a year after my accident, I realized that I would not be the same. And I went on disability. And disability gave me $1,000. It was, at that time, it was like $900 a month. I had 3 children. They gave me $900 a month for me. And they gave me $122, I think, for each child. Keep in mind, that's to pay my rent. I had food stamps, but it wasn't a lot. So a lot of times we would run out of food stamps. It's not that much to pay.
Yeah, but it's not as organized as it should.
Giving my children hope, that was the hard part because they went to a private school. So they lived with all these people who were very well off, who drove nice cars, whose parents were giving them credit cards to spend carte blanche. And then they came back here, and I'm saying, no, we don't buy name brand gym shoes. No, we're not going out to eat. We got to do whatever mama's got to cook. It was disappointing from a mother's home because I wanted to give them the best. And I always thought when I had my children, I was going to be able to shower them. That was my desire, as I think most parents. That was my desire, but I wasn't able to do that.
The third case study's in Louisiana.
I was born and raised in this little town called Devant, Louisiana, in 1945. just about everyone in this community had done fishing of one type or another, either crab fishing, shrimping, or oystering, at least part-time. It was a wonderful way to make a living. God gave us a heaven here, a gold mine. It was there for the taking. Anyone that wanted to make a good, honest living could do it. All they needed was a strong back and a little bit of brains. No matter what time of year it was, you were either shrimping, crabbing, dredging oysters. A person that didn't have any work could come to this marina, go by the conveyors where they were unloading in the evening, and hey, I need a job. Okay, show up here tomorrow morning. You had a job. The people of this area, this entire area, depend on the environment. They depend on what God gave us. And God gave us a lot down here, but we didn't know how to take care of it. Just a falling empires, slowly flowing through my hands. Had someone told me 10 years ago that this place would be this dormant, I'd never believe it. I never would have believed it. But it's happened, and it's happened so quickly.
Are you guys old enough to remember the oil leak in the Gulf of America? I guess it's called.
The what?
The Gulf of America. It was called the Gulf of Mexico. Supposedly Trump changed it to Gulf of America.
When you told me that change actually went through.
Is it for real?
So it's officially Gulf of, I don't know, it's still Gulf of Mexico to me.
Right. Right. I think it.
I remember them talking
Probably
about
day
it.
one. My understanding was that one of the presidents put a moratorium on drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico. So the name was changed to the Gulf of America.
He's so lame.
So we could get gas to fill up our cars and drive.
He's so lame. Like, that's just so like it's ridiculous. Like, what do you gain out of that?
So the
And his wife's not
moratorium,
even from America, so like.
correct. The moratorium could have happened because of this. It was the spill where something erupted, all this shit came up from the floor, killed all the fish, killed all the food. So this dude went out of a job. And this was 12 years ago.
It's just.
It was probably BP,
That sounds right.
British Petroleum. So it caused a serious amount of unemployment. So that's
Unimaginable. I don't know if it's because of the natural disaster that we had with Katrina or the oil spill. The natural resources are not there anymore. The coastline is washing away. There's places that when I was in high school, we used to go out and hunt rabbits. And now those places don't exist. They're all water. They're gone, completely gone.
so half their oysters died. Anybody here ever eaten oysters? My wife likes them. I'm a vegetarian. So. What are they? Are they the same? They look like snot. Do they look like snot? Do they look like snot?
I don't even eat seafood.
So that was a lot of money though. So these dudes fished every day and got it, and then the oil killed it all. So they had to wait for it all to come back.
It's a minimum, or an average of 3 years before that oyster's ready for the market to be harvested. Next year there'll be no oysters. For 3 years there won't be any oysters. And this year we had a very low harvest of shrimp. So what's gonna happen?
Oh, I hate to be like that.
I don't know.
Right, yeah.
I don't have any confidence in the future.
So this dude's probably my dad's.
Unless we get a drastic change, a sudden change in the amount of seafood and the prices, there's no way that I can continue to do this and survive with it. Because all I am doing now is losing money, you know? Just can't do it. The numbers don't add up. They just don't add up. Okay. I don't worry about myself that much. It's only just me and Bonnie. We'll survive. But my children, I worry about my children. This community, I've seen a change not only with income, but I can see a change in the people. The people that are still here are not happy anymore. The people were always jolly. They didn't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow was taken care of. And now everyone's worried. They're all stressed.
New Orleans,
Catholic
Louisiana.
Charities was here up until last week, paying people's utilities for them. They couldn't pay them. And now they're gone. They left last week. So a lot of these families that were dependent on that, they don't even have that now. So, in this great United States, believe it or not, we're gonna have people down here that are gonna have their electricity cut off. And they're gonna be living that way. I hope that it gets better. But deep down inside, being realistic, I don't see it. It's just a culture, the whole culture is gone.
Poverty is struggling to make things work. When you have to struggle paycheck to paycheck, that's poverty. You try to fight yourself out of it, but you can't. You can't.
So the labor of poverty, everybody working 2 jobs.
I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, with my 2 sisters and my brother, my mother, and my father, until my father decided to just leave the house and leave us by ourselves, which hurt my mother mentally and got her unstable. We would have never survived if welfare didn't approve us and we were getting food stamps every month and no. Me, by myself, I wouldn't have been able to do it, and I had to give up going to college. Went down to the racetrack in New York City with a friend of mine, started hot walking horses coming off the track, and that's where I started working, which was at the racetrack, and turned around and did it for 22 years. It was every day, 365 days a year, and that was it. There was never a day off.
Not even Christmas. So this is true that working poor twice likely to have more jobs and then give up sleep in order to work. So like, it's rough.
I came here to North Carolina after I stopped working at the racetrack, and when you come off of that, everybody's like, okay, so what skill do you have? It's like, you really don't. You know, I had a skill of putting horses on the racetrack. I was in the shelter 3 months. It's a hard thing because North Carolina, the unemployment rate is 9.4. It's one of the highest in the United States. Being in the shelter, I wasn't ashamed of it. I did it on my own. I wasn't there because I used drugs, because I was an alcoholic. I refused to sleep in the street. I wasn't going to get put in jail for sleeping in the street. Every day I used to get up, get dressed, and go out to look for a job and stuff like that. And then when I found out about Jim Noble's restaurant and the church services that they have here, and I introduced myself.
It is a 501c faith-based, not-for-profit restaurant. That's unusual. In fact, there's not been many done like this, I don't think. And it really has two parts. One is to help raise money for a nonprofit that we're going to give all the profits away to help feed the poor. Secondly, King's Kitchen Restoration Program, which is a discipleship, life-changing program to help people get back on their feet through on-the-job training, obviously, Bible study, discipleship. Even though it's a ministry, we also are a restaurant, and we have to compete, and we have to execute, and we have to run the restaurant right, and the whole thing will fall. And this is not an easy industry to be in anyway. Restaurant business is tough.
In front of you, beside you. I came here and I volunteered here, and they threw me as a dishwasher. I've never worked in a restaurant before. Cole, we got a 4-time getting up. And it shocked everybody how fast I pick it up. When I put my mind to something that I really want to do, I know I can do it. I'll come with a big tray. Thank you for calling King's Kitchen this afternoon. This is James. How can I assist you? One day, Chef Jesse came up to me. He goes, we all came together. We're hiring you. I said, you kidding? He goes, you start tomorrow. Would you like me to take your blue finger? Thank you, yes. Is everything okay? Yes. Please come back. And when I started working here, they worked with my hours down at the shelter. They saved me a bed. And when I got my first paycheck, I looked in the paper and saw this place and took the bus down there, filled out the application, and there was a 1-bedroom apartment ready. And that was the last time the shelter saw me. When I got off the bus, I put my hand in my pocket and I had the keys to my own place. And when I opened up the door, I was like, you're home. And the first thing that I did, I called up my 2 sisters and my brother. And your brother is just fine. Your brother's fine. And my sister goes, you're out of the shelter? I said, yep. I said, I got my own place and everything. Adam, these are the only dishes that don't match over here. 8 months later, I'm still here. I'm the head busboy. Please come again. I love working. I don't stop. When I come in the morning, I get here an hour before my shift starts. How you doing? How's everything? My income right now, I would make in a year between about $11,000 to $15,000. People in poverty live in poverty-stricken areas. People who have money don't even go close to where those people live. You think they worry about who's living on the street? No, because they were never part of it. And if you're not part of it, why think about it? Try to climb the ladder by yourself sometimes. It's hard. I don't judge people, and I hope that people don't judge me.
I give the scenario sometimes. I've heard you guys say you might do graduate school. How many of y'all want to get your MSW, your Master's in Social Work? It'll double your salary. What'd you say?
Yeah.
You're allowed to.
I thought about it, but I don't feel right now, so.
Right. So you can get a license with a bachelor's. Yeah. So you can get just your bachelor's. You can work. What convinced me, I guess I'll tell my story. I got $25,000 a year. Somebody called me up and said, "Oh, you got a master's in social work. If you get a license, we'll pay you $35,000 a year." It was like a 50% raise. It felt like, or like 30. I don't know, something stupid. Yeah.
That was my thing. At first, I was just gonna graduate.
Right. But then you find out it was one more year.
That
11 months.
Just with the fact like eligibility with like basketball and stuff, I might as well. And then the pay stuff.
You could redshirt and get the MBA, another paid for MBA, get your 1 year MSW. It'll probably double your pay. I know at hospice right now, we hired in social work MSWs with the license for $70,000 a year. I think that's good. I know that the economy is rough and it's gotten harder. You can also do PRN. So I was $35,000 when I got my independent license. Claremont Recovery Center paid me $42,000. When I went to Ohio Mentor, it was like way up, but their insurance was $1,000 a month. So I left there and worked at Lighthouse. And then I taught at NKU. So this was like $46,000, $47,000. And I bought a house on that salary. So it sounds crazy, but like I bought a house at $25,000 a year. It was only a $100,000 home. I know now they're expensive. I was in grad school when I bought that house, so I used some of my student loan, $21,000 a year in student loans. Tuition was maybe half that, so I was able to put $10,000 down on the house. I got 2 dudes to rent for me that went to the graduate school. They each paid $300 a month. Even when I got married, I turned my 2 garages into apartments. I'd rent those out. So you do what you have to survive and thrive. I sold that house for like $150,000. I bought a house for $155,000. When I started teaching here and at Miami, it was like $50,000 a year. And then as you go up with tenure and promotion, you can get the different raises. But with the student loans, it was weird. I felt like I made something out of nothing. Like I literally bought the house when I was making $7 an hour. But I had the 2 roommates. No, don't leave. No, don't turn off. See, I'm talking too long again. That means I need to shut the fuck up. But it's doable. Like, and I do owe $250,000 in student loans with interest. I owe $309,000. There is a PSLF. It's called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Almost every social work job qualifies. Teaching at a public school qualifies. I've done 9 years. So 2016, I graduated. 2026, I should be forgiven. I always fear that somebody's going to take it away. It could be the next president, could be this president, could be the last president. They said the Biden federal loan thing was unconstitutional, so they put me in forbearance over the summer. So that freaked me out. And I wanted to curse Biden for it. I don't know. I'm sure Trump will do the same thing. All the presidents seem to do the same.
I think Trump, I don't think you're going to let us go.
Let us go 4 years?
No, Trump. I don't think he's going to last.
Well, then you get the one dude below him, right? Is that what you're saying?
Crackpot.
I think he's.
So who'd you rather have? Right.
Both of them. I don't want none.
Right, but then after that, because there's a line of succession.
Well, I don't want Jake either.
Right. And believe me, people, every.
I feel like they need to start assassinating presidents.
It's going to be an inside job. I think it's going to be.
Let's do it like the French
Nowadays,
did.
they missing too much. We need to dig up the old people that assassinated the presidents back in the day.
The real hitman.
And they need to put one more to hit out because they didn't miss back then.
I don't know
And
not
what's going
enough
on now.
It is crazy too, because I know I asked you guys this before. Has anybody been to a third world country? Anywhere? Mexico?
Yeah, I'm in high school.
Oh, Mexico is a third one.
Maybe it could be considered a developing country. Have you seen the poverty there? I guess that's what I'm saying.
I would never into it. I would never go to my country because I would never get on a plane. So that's
Right.
dead.
I mean, I took a Greyhound through Mexico to Guatemala and Nicaragua. It's 5 days, and you're sitting next to the shitter. It starts smelling when it gets
Oh
hot.
my God. Yeah, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah. But you start experiencing real poverty. I know this is American poverty, and we still have flushable toilets. So that's confusing to my whole family I lived with in Nicaragua. They're like, your toilet's flushes. We took a bucket and you dumped it to flush. The electric and water would turn off every day. So you had to shower at the right times. When I visited India, it's crazy. So I know we've got 6 minutes left on this, but I'll finish up this one. Is it supposed to end on a message of hope?
And that's how I've always lived.
Let's see. Oh yeah, this lady goes. What's that? They always have some weird. They filmed us today for Channel 9 as a follow-up to the story I showed you guys last week about getting more social workers out there. And I guarantee you they're going to have some clip of me looking like an idiot or like picking my nose. I don't know.
I think hope is important for people who are in poverty because that's the only thing that's going to stop them from making a desperate move to make life better. If you have no hope and you don't think Superman's coming, you may jump yourself. And when I say jump, I don't mean killing yourself. I mean making rash decisions and doing things that may be even uncharacteristic for yourself, but because you're so desperate.
Like there's bad loan sharks out there. That's a good example. When she says doing something desperate, not jumping and killing yourself, but maybe you'll borrow at, what are they called? Like payday loans? One of them fuckers that has 100% interest, where like you borrow 100 this week and you pay back 200 next month. And that's like, dude, that's not right, but it's legal. So
we cannot be silent while that happens. We cannot say, oh, well, that's on them. No, systems need to be broken to stop poverty too. Policy needs to change in order to stop poverty. And there need to be people in place who can properly change policy to help poverty. At the same time, there are people who are poor who need to know that there's a way out of this and need to know that they are more than their poverty. Because I believe that if we tell people that they are better than they think they are, that they will do better than they think they can.
This is not the end. Tomorrow we will shine like stars.
Every other day, you'll see like gang violence going on outside of school or kids fighting. But what really keep me calm is either drawing or playing basketball.
What?
Dr. Hunt does
We
that.
bring young people in, and most of them have already either dropped out or are in situations where they're not doing well in school.
Where I come from.
This component is around adding creativity to their life. Creativity and dignity, the two key words here, and saying, okay, you have not only something to learn in terms of math and science towards getting your GED, but you have a story to tell. You've seen something. And what I want to do is help you tell that story. We want to help you tell that story because once you can tell that story, you can own your life. You own your identity. So helping them to tell those stories is one way of giving them hope in the midst of what they're going through. Poor is not what you are. Poor is part of what you are, and it's a situation that can change.
This is not the end. This is not the end of this. We'll open our eyes wide, wider. This is not our last. This is not our last breath.
I started a nonprofit called Born to Be Light, and I came up with a pledge. Born to Be Light is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the aggressive promotion of nonviolence. And they take the pledge, and the pledge is right on the front, and it says, I wear this band to take a stand against violence. I pledge to be the change you see in my home and community because I'm a light. So I go around to the schools and communities and functions, and I have the people wear the bands. I have them take the pledge, and it works. It really works. So I'm not just sitting back waiting for somebody to give me something. I'm trying to help myself. I'm trying to help my community. I understand that people might look at me and say, well, you're getting a handout. You're on disability. But I promise you, if I could be anything but on disability, I would. And I've done everything that I can do to make myself better. I've written a book. I've gone back to school. I've done a CD. I do outreach programs. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. So the fact that I'm still on disability is through no fault of mine. Since my accident, I haven't had one day that I haven't had pain, but it hasn't stopped me from going to school and being on the dean's list and a president's scholar. It hasn't stopped me.
This is not the end. This is not the end. Tomorrow we will shine like stars.
I'm doing mechanics, I'm working, I do computers, I do art and music. I'm doing fire safety to try to become a fireman. Though I am poor, I do not consider myself poor because I feel like as long as there's a person watching over me, as long as I'm connected with my family, and as long as my legs and body work and I'm able to go out and make some money, there's no way that I will feel poor.
So we cut it in half in the 50s and in the 60s, the poverty rate. So ideally we do it again.
Yeah. Advocate.
So one other, does anyone have refugees in their community?
We had in my high school there, but we were just studying kids.
Okay. So I'll show you this next time. But this is the group we work with at St. Leo's. And we did begin doing some horticulture therapy. And there's also, this is what I ended up writing my dissertation on, actually, for my doctorate. But that was when I still had like a ponytail. That's kind of funny back there.
Is that you?
Yeah.
What? Zoom in again. Oh my Lord.
It's me. I donate my hair to Locks of Love.
You look like Jesus.
But now I got old ass gray hairs I can't donate. So the cool stuff this church does do now is, for one, the food pantry. 300 refugees came from Burundi, Africa. It was a post-Civil War status, asylum refugee status they got in. And then 400 came from Chile, Guatemala. So here's the other ones. There's, the youth group. We took them canoeing once. That was freaking hilarious because not everybody knows how to swim. So it can be dangerous if you get on a canoe and like it flips or shit like that. That's why we got the life jackets. We have our Burundi refugee ministry. We've got kind of their story, and then also the Guatemalan ministry, and then the garden was the big piece added in that I wrote a 150-page dissertation on.
150 pages.
Yeah. Crazy, huh? Crazy. Yeah, because if you go to, do you guys ever go to scholar.google.com?
Yeah.
Where you get your citations?
Yeah.
So I think the dissertation I never obviously published, but it's in here just because. There it is. Yeah. So if you looked up, like, I had to write a thesis in my theology master's, and then also an evaluation of the Burundi ministry program. So it's not as bad as you think, because it's 6 30-page papers or 6 25-page papers, right? And that's how that is your big old final 158, I guess. And yeah. But if you look at it by chapter, so like I said, you do chapter 1 is your intro, background, the need for the study, the statement of the problem, the refugees coming over. You review the literature, like challenges of immigration in the U.S., effective counseling practices with asylees. My chapter 3, you always say how you're going to study them. I just did interviews of like 10 refugees and 5 church members. Chapter 4 is like what your results came through as, and then chapter 5, you talk about it. So like wellness with the refugees, economic self-sufficiency, one of the goals. You like try to set goals. As social workers, you're going to do goals and objectives on a treatment plan, and we'll talk about that more. Then I created my own theory of refugee resettlement. I don't know if anybody will ever use it or quote it. You know, you write stuff and people probably never read it, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Future research limitations, and then you got like all your data. So that's what it looks like. Now, if you got your doctorate at the University of Kentucky, I don't think you have to do this. You could get your doctorate in social work. It's a DSW. Dr. Jackson did it in 2 years while working full time. So you get an MSW in 11 months, 1 year. Even online at the University of Kentucky, I went in person, and then you can get a DSW in 2 years. So like a lot of it is based off your placements. Some student workers go to Dr. Hunt and get placed right over there in that building. Do you guys know where you want to do your placements? Kids, old people, dead people. Students. Okay. That's how I started, because when I was younger, I didn't want to work with freaking adults. One of my internships was a men's homeless shelter. But when you're like 26 and you're working with a 50-year-old homeless dude, sometimes you're like, I don't know if I have as much to offer them as I would think. However, you will be trained in that. You know what I mean? Like you'll get trained on what to do, how to do it. Oh, here is our new social work professor. Does anybody have the social work classes starting in March? There's at least 1 or 2. So, okay, well, here she is, Dr. Gifty Shriffy. I hope I'm saying it right. I've published with her. She's got better on the H index than I do. If you like try to compare yourself publishing, oh, I do have I got 5, but since 2020 I got 4. So yeah, she's published. We usually don't hire somebody with that many freaking publications. That's freaking impressive. I'm not gonna lie. So she's like done her shit. She's done her internships. She's done her doctorate. There was a PhD. She did the PhD. That means a philosophy doctorate. But she is your new professor. You may see her in the hallways tomorrow. And her specialty is aging and grandparents. That's one of our publications and presentations. And African immigrants living in the U.S. Actually, I want to see that. That's what I wrote mine on. Damn. Okay, cited by 43. That's all together. So that's, yeah, people are like citing her work and everything. That's crazy. Because you never like, I have dyslexia. I never wanted a license. I didn't want to take the test or write notes or write in general. We've had software since that have helped. Now you guys got AI, but we had voice to text that helped me type. We had software that would read the book to me that helped me finish. I never knew that I had dyslexia until about graduate school, because I always just like showed up to class